Welcome to our channel where we dive into the most chilling and mysterious tales from around the world. Tonight we navigate the murky depths of maritime horror. Stories of those lost at sea, their souls returning to the land of the living. Today we bring you 3 spine-tingling stories of ghostly sailors seen on deserted coastal docks. Places where the veil between our world and the next wears thin. Turn off the lights, sit back, and prepare to be haunted. Our first tale takes us to the jagged cliffs and windswept shores of the Atlantic coast. Imagine the salty air, thick with the smell of brine and seaweed, the mournful cry of gulls echoing across the water. It's here we meet a grizzled old fisherman named Elias, a man who'd spent his life braving the unpredictable moods of the sea. One particularly dense, foggy night, Elias found himself drawn to his small fishing boat. The fog was so thick he could barely see his hand in front of his face. An unnatural silence had descended upon the usually raucous harbor. Something felt off, the air heavy with a strange static charge. Ignoring the prickling unease crawling up his spine, Elias cast off, his boat cutting through the still water like a knife. He was alone, or so he thought. As his small boat drifted further out, he noticed a figure emerge from the swirling fog at the end of the old creaking dock. A tall, imposing figure dressed in what appeared to be a weathered oilskin coat and a sou'wester hat pulled low over its face, obscuring its features. Elias, his curiosity piqued, called out, his voice swallowed by the thick fog. There was no answer, only the unsettling sound of the figure's heavy boots hitting the wooden planks. Elias, now thoroughly unnerved, watched as the figure raised a hand, pointing out to sea. It was then that the smell of salt air was replaced with something else. Something akin to decaying seaweed and stagnant water. A deep, bone-chilling cold settled around Elias despite the mild temperature. The figure then turned, and for the briefest of moments Elias could have sworn he saw a skeletal face beneath the hat, eyes burning with an eerie internal glow. The figure then simply vanished, dissolving back into the fog as if it had never been there at all. Shaken to his core, Elias felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over him. He knew that face, he was sure of it. It was the face of a sailor lost at sea decades ago, a face he'd seen plastered on missing posters as a boy. Suddenly the wind picked up, the gentle rocking of the boat becoming more violent as the sea began to churn. The fog, previously thick and impenetrable, began to swirl and part, revealing a storm brewing on the horizon. A storm of an intensity Elias had never seen in all his years at sea. It was as if the ghostly sailor had warned him, a harbinger of the impending tempest. Elias, heeding the spectral warning, immediately turned his boat around, fighting against the growing waves, racing back to the safety of the harbor. He could hear the ghostly sailor's laughter echoing in the wind, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the waves. From that day forward, Elias never ventured out to sea alone, forever haunted by the ghostly encounter on that foggy night. Our next story takes us from the rough Atlantic to the warmer waters of the Caribbean, to a small island steeped in maritime history and whispered tales of shipwrecks and buried treasure. It's here we meet Dr. Emily Carter, a renowned marine archaeologist, obsessed with uncovering the mysteries of a Spanish galleon rumored to have sunk centuries ago. Armed with old maps, sonar equipment, and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge, Dr. Carter and her team set out to find the final resting place of the Santa Isabella. Weeks turned into months, hope slowly dwindling with each passing day, until one fateful afternoon their sonar equipment picked up something promising, the distinct outline of a ship lying on the seabed. Excitement rippled through the team as they prepared for their first dive. As Dr. Carter descended into the crystal-clear water, she felt a sense of anticipation, mixed with a strange unease. The closer she got to the wreckage, the more she felt a presence, a cold spot in the warm Caribbean waters. Ignoring the feeling, she pressed on. The Santa Isabella was breathtaking, even in its ruined state. Cannons lay half buried in the sand, the ship's wooden hull covered in coral and algae, a ghostly reminder of its former glory. As Dr. Carter swam closer to the captain's quarters, she noticed a figure standing on the deck, a figure that sent a chill down her spine. It was the figure of a man dressed in the tattered remnants of a Spanish naval uniform, his face obscured by shadow and time. He stood motionless, his spectral form seemingly unaffected by the ocean currents. Dr. Carter, though terrified, felt a strange sense of peace emanating from the figure. He wasn't menacing, more like a lonely guardian watching over his final resting place. Mustering her courage, Dr. Carter approached the figure, holding out a hand in a gesture of peace. As she did, the figure turned, revealing the face of a young man, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. He opened his mouth as if to speak, his voice a low, mournful whisper that echoed through the water, sending shivers down Dr. Carter's spine. He spoke of the storm that had claimed his ship, the mutiny that had led to his untimely demise, and the treasure that lay hidden within the captain's quarters, a treasure he was bound to protect for all eternity. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he vanished, leaving Dr. Carter alone with the ghost of his story. Following the spectral sailor's lead, Dr. Carter and her team discovered a hidden compartment within the captain's quarters, a compartment filled with gold coins, jewels, and ancient artifacts. It was a discovery that would rewrite history, but for Dr. Carter, it was the encounter with the ghostly sailor, the guardian of the Santa Isabella, that would stay with her forever. The treasure was one thing, but the story, the sailor's story, was priceless. Our final tale takes us to the fog-shrouded shores of the Pacific Northwest, to a small, forgotten coastal town with a dark secret. It's here, on the outskirts of town, where a dilapidated dock stretched out into the dark, choppy waters, its timbers rotting, its pilings covered in barnacles and seaweed, that the locals whispered of strange occurrences, of ghostly figures seen wandering the shoreline. The stories began subtly. Late-night fishermen claiming to see flickering lanterns at the end of the dock, their flames burning an unnatural blue. Others spoke of hearing the mournful strains of an old sea shanty carried on the wind, the ethereal voices seeming to emanate from the very depths of the sea. Then, the sightings began. People reported seeing figures emerge from the swirling mist that perpetually clung to the dock, figures dressed in old-fashioned sailor's garb, their faces obscured by the shadows. They seemed to appear and disappear at will, their movements fluid and unnatural, their presence marked by an oppressive silence and a bone-chilling cold. One particular night, a group of teenagers, emboldened by a mixture of youthful bravado and liquid courage, decided to investigate the haunted dock. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a healthy dose of skepticism, they ventured out onto the creaking timbers, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the night. They didn't believe the stories, dismissing them as mere local folklore. That is, until they reached the end of the dock. As they huddled together, their flashlight beam dancing across the water, they noticed the temperature plummet, the air growing heavy with a strange metallic tang. Then they saw them. Emerging from the swirling mist, a group of figures, their forms tall and imposing, their eyes glowing with an eerie internal light. The teenagers stood frozen in terror, their blood turning to ice in their veins. One of the figures, taller than the others, stepped forward, its skeletal hand reaching out towards the terrified teenagers. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, pointed teeth, and let out a deafening wail, a sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of reality. The teenagers, their courage shattered, turned and ran, their screams echoing across the water. They would later recall the events of that night with a mixture of terror and disbelief, their lives forever changed by their encounter on the haunted dock. The stories continued, each more chilling than the last, until the town council, in a desperate attempt to quell the growing hysteria, decided to demolish the dock. But even after the last timber had been removed, the stories persisted. Some say that on the anniversary of the ghostly sailor's demise, the mournful strains of a sea shanty can still be heard carried on the wind, a chilling reminder of the souls lost at sea, their spirits forever bound to the haunted shores. Thank you for joining us on this eerie journey into the heart of maritime horror. The sea, for all its beauty, holds its fair share of darkness, of souls lost and stories untold. If you enjoyed these tales of ghostly sailors and deserted docks, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more chilling tales from the dark side. and be sure to share your own ghostly encounters in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open for the unexplained, for you never know what lurks just beyond the veil.